There you go, bro. I know. I'm so back with this.
if I mean, at the best of times, it's hard for me to even get you on. For anyone that's out there, just so you know, let me just, for the record, because this is going to be some jokes. All I'm going to say to you is,
Yeah,
for anyone that knows me, I was like this little forlorn kid that could never get Fabio. Groove would accept it, you get me, but I could never get you on the phone. But then
yeah,
Groove said to me one day, "Gold, don't take it personally. I can't get him on the fucking phone. I've been riding him for 35, 40 years. You ain't got a chance. That's just Fabio. It's the way he is." And I'm like, "What do you mean? But I cut him a dub plate last week." He says, "You've been cutting 10 dub plates. All you're going to do is give it Fabio finger, and you're going to be
Finger.
done. Give me the finger." But Fabio, seriously, as well, I can call you Fitz. Not many people can. I'm indebted to you and Groove. I think the idea of celebrating an album 25 years later, and this isn't just an idea of blowing smoke about it, but that wasn't my album. It was our album. It was an album of coming of age, and I think the playground, the university for me was reinforced. The place of execution for me was Rage. It was Rage. It was finding another place after kind of being in the Midlands, in New York and Miami, and coming back to London and not wanting to go back to the Midlands because you don't want that shame to you where you come back and you feel like you haven't achieved. But Rage is just an incredible learning ground of you guys playing sonics that at any point either one of you could have just moved with the times of what, you know, anyone like Trevor Fung or Carl Cox would have moved on to, and they became people in their own right. But you had found a genre between you, you know, and I felt that was so. I think that's something that no one's really. I think the whole Rage thing last year gave credit to that in the way that it was celebrated, and of course the one gig I missed was that one, and I was in time.
That was a shame.
But what you guys achieved for all of us, from Steve Digital to Nookie to me to Caliber, to all of the people that have followed you and found themselves in your music, in their music that you made your own by putting it in this culture of mixing. You know, I remember being in Rage and hearing Ride Take Dark Angel and Terminator, and it didn't become me and Scotty's. For that moment in time, it was neither one of us. We didn't belong to us anymore. It belonged to you guys. And without any further ado, I think that I was saying to, I've always said, and I was saying specifically to my friend that the ring, which is timeless, the finished thing, is not what timeless is. It's the crucible of what made the ring, which made it, one, technology at the time, two, you know, the changing social condition, the way that we were socially.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to know from your perspective. Pre-timeless, and how important the music of what you were championing, and I was picking up really quickly. How important was Rage, firstly, and what was the impact of, you know, people like Nookie, people like, you know, Kickman Records, things like Leo and Baldy,
Yeah,
things that were these bastard, in the same way British Fashion was Christopher Nemeth crossed over with Vivian Westwood, crossed over with American baseball. What was it? Just give me just for anyone that's watching doesn't know it. What was that about, Rage, in that sense for us?
you know what? I think Rage at the same time was very important in Groove because we just come out of Acid House. We come out of Acid House and we was a little bit lost because the criminal justice bill had screwed up the whole rave scene. So we were like, we didn't want to go back into clubs. We were like, going back into clubs is going to destroy the whole ethos of being outside. But Rage was always on. Rage used to be a night called Babylon. Kevin Millings used to run a night called Babylon, which used to have the Young Disciples, Femi, and those guys playing upstairs, and they used to have Mark Moore. It was like a gay, funky, like what you're talking about. The fashion, it was Red or Dead, Catherine Hamnett. You know, that whole London thing, which was so special at the time.
Yeah.
And it kind of encapsulated that. But then Rage came along, and it was a slightly different twist because Trevor and Trevor and God bless his soul, Colin Faber, who's one of the greatest DJs
One of the greatest
of all time. God bless his soul, man. I looked up to that guy the way you guys look up to me and Groove. Colin Faber was a god. He was. That's why taking the job from him was so difficult. It was so difficult, man. You know, Trevor, I love Trevor to the bone, but Colin was on a different level. Colin was I don't give a fuck. I'm just playing what I want. And he played this dark, very foreboding, very, very, very apocalyptic style of music, which in a funny sort of way didn't really suit the ethos of Rage, really. It was a little bit too dark. And so it came at a really important time for me and Groove, because it's not like we weren't lost, but we needed something solid. We needed a residency. And it's really funny because every time in our lives when we hit a crossroads, something's come up. You know, Rage, and then for me it was Speed, then for Groove it was Metalheads, then it was Swerve, then it was Radio 1. We've had a very linear passage of having luck at the right time. And I think Rage, you know what, Goldie? I think the great thing about Rage was we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't. Me and Groove never sat down and consciously thought we were killing it, or we were, all these people are religiously following you. We didn't. All we cared about was what tunes we had in our bag. That's all we cared. Like, what have we got for them this week, right? And so there was never a conscious thing where we're forming this amazing cacophony of sounds and sonics. It was just like me and Groove. Groove would ring me on a Wednesday and go, "Boy, have you heard that? Blah blah blah." Do you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, he never used to do it all the time because he used to keep some shit back for me.
Yeah.
And he used to like tic-tac-toe and things like that.
Oh, please. I mean, that was for me, for anyone, for anyone that really knows, and as an endgame tune for a while, when Kimmy bought it on a white label from Chris at Music Power, when I heard Tic-Tac-Toe, the introduction of that tune, and it blew my mind because it was those kind of tunes, Homeboy Hippie and a Funky Dread, you know, all these tunes, and then you started getting all these mad things with Ibiza Records and Warrington the Snowman, Two Shot Two Wounded. Do you know what I mean? Then you had you had NHS coming from Absolute 2 with Simon, which was
Simon Baseline Smith, absolutely. Ray Keith.
Yeah, Ray Keith was killing it, and of course Pedro, you know, came up with Ray doing some mad white stuff and 16-track things. But I think that when I came into it via Kemi on the back of Miami and New York and not going back to the Midlands, and you know, there's stories in other interviews, so I don't really have to touch on that as much. But the idea of what I think the angle with you, I've always thought, is that the musicality of you and Groove, and obviously, like you said, we didn't know what you were playing, but there was a definite thing where, looking at you as gods, we could see the silhouette of you both, and we could make out one's Groove and one's Fabio, which one, and when the crossover, I know it seems really mad from a fanboy point of view, but when you changed over, you could hear the change in the music.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like it was where we booed off Carl Cox that night because you were out on holiday and you got booed off. You got booed off. We're like, man, all these guys are just going, nah, man, I want jungle, man. I want jungle music. You know, everyone's like, sure.
You was at the front of that queue as well. You was at the front of that queue as well.
No, but I think I love Carl now, but I'm like, Carl, sorry, you had to cut it. It's almost like with Rage. You ain't cutting it, you're coming off. It's like, it just wasn't going to happen. And I felt that period of time is very Freudian for me. The smell of Rage, the idea of running up to the cage, the idea of certain people coming out of the woodwork when certain tunes were played, and the kind of ravers and the kind of laser, and it all started changing. It did become moodier. But when you said about Colin Faber and it was dark, there was a different kind of darkness being played. Because when you played, you know, when you played certain tunes. But for me, I found a cassette the other day. Well, I've had it for years. And it's really strange because someone handed it to me, and it's a one-sided cassette. And it's you playing a set. It's Fabio Rage recorded. And there ain't not that I know to any recordings. And in the middle of all of these tunes, you just play Angel. and it was like you played it from the beginning because it was a weird. I guess it was at that time because it sounded like a normal record. If that's the wrong thing to say, it just stood out a lot. It was different, and you played it, and I thought, kind of have to have the balls to play that record at that time was a bit weird because it wasn't normal. It's kind of like saying, yeah, it's kind of like saying, from my point of view, it's like people playing Inner City at speed. It wasn't never really played as much, but it was because it was an arrangement as opposed to being a set of loops. Does that make sense? You can play Metal, you can play Pulp Fiction, you can play these things, but Inner City Life as a song structure, it almost sounded like an interval.
Yeah, because the thing is though, what's bizarre is that Tic Tac Toe had that Goldie vibe to it. It had that. It was brutal and it was beautiful at the same time, and that's where you came in because up until then, the simplistic nature of jungle, which everyone loved, you know what I mean, and Bonnet and Snowman, tunes like that, Ibiza Records, Living Dream. There was a simplicity, but you see, why I played Angel from the start is because you couldn't mix it with nothing. You couldn't. It sounded too different. So if you was to mix it, it was like playing another genre. So I just thought you got to play this tune, just stop the fucking music and play it from the start because it didn't really fit in. It didn't fit into what anyone was making, but it fitted into Fabio and Groove Rider because this was what Angel and Sinister and all those tunes were.
Well, I want to get to Sinister, but I felt that's what it is. You've got
Angel was more me than Sinister was. Sinister, look.
I always thought you were Sinister though, because you always played Sinister.
I always played Sinister, but I played it to tear up the dance floor. But on a personal level, you used to make tunes. At the time, you made tunes for me, Groove, Scotty, and Randall.
That was it.
And you could hear, if you made a tune for Randall,
that's it.
I could hear Randall. And if you made a tune for Scotty, I could hear Scotty.
Yeah.
You made a tune for me, I could hear me. And then every now and again, you'd make a tune for all of us. And you'd have a bit of Randall in there, and a bit of Scotty, and a bit of me, and a bit of Groove.
Well, you touched on something regarding Tic Tac Toe. You are what you eat. And I think that when I look at those tunes, Kemi and Storm used to log all of the record, all the whites that they used to buy. They used to log them all. Like it's just they were super, like really anal organised.
Yeah.
But I was on tour in Australia with Basement Jaxx, and Felix was on stage. They were big business at the time, huge. I mean, they're still one of the bands I think they broke out. And Felix came to me. We're talking, me and Felix, and he went, "It was amazing, so the music we made," and I said, Rage and whatever. He goes, "Yeah, man." I'm like, Tic Tac Toe. And what do you mean, Tic Tac Toe? He goes, "Well, I made it." And I didn't realise that Basement Jaxx
made Tic Tac Toe.
Tic Tac Toe. Now, you got to understand, people that are listening to this, Basement Jaxx is what you heard on the radio, and it's Basement Jaxx and great, you know what I mean, a little bit regular. But it's like saying from graffiti, we all became contemporary artists at the source. At the source of Rage, everyone became something within the music, with whatever genre of music. It was the wild style of the music and the melting pot of Rage. What I was uniquely saying was the melting pot of Rage, because taking Guy Called Gerald down for the first time to hear you play Love's a Drug and 28 Gun Bad Boy and seeing him just lose his shit. And I was the one. It was. I'm the one that's got to lose my shit and do my pills, but he was on a podium, just going nuts. And I'm like, and I remember being on the balcony with him, and you drawed the tune. I think it was on the dance floor. It was Love's a Drug, and he came upstairs in 28 Gun Bad Boy, and he saw this thing that he'd not seen in Manchester with 808 State and everything else.
Yeah.
So it was a really important thing what you'd done for us, because it charged me especially to and everyone to make this music. And I think the eclecticism, like with Angel, for example, it's Mark and Digo engineering for me. So Mark in the day, Digo in the evening. So when it was Saint Angel, it was like, right, me and Mark, it's going to get dark.
Yeah.
And because Digo wasn't in that. So the idea of having this yin and the yang, well, that was what you and Groove were. And I think that, you know, me and Groove had a bit of a laugh because obviously there's a couple of great stories. But with you, we spoke the other day, and I listened to every Les McCann tune there possibly is on the planet, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
And you know, you might think, well, what's the relativity of it? Well, the relativity is that this thing, music, it's just I'll always find something new that I've never heard,
Heard before, I know.
and you've got to go back to go forward. It's
Yeah,
just
you do. Well, Goldie, in this lockdown, that's what I've done. I've rediscovered a lot of stuff that I was when I was younger. When I was one of my earliest memories was I was about 6, 7, and I've always suffered with insomnia, even now. That's why when he was like, "Listen, this message, we're going to do this 2 minute at 10," I was like, "You be fucking
your man.
serious, bro." So I've always had this thing where I couldn't sleep, and I remember I used to listen to the radio because I was really into the funk. My dad playing funk and reggae, and I got drawn towards funk, but you couldn't hear it on the radio. So I used to listen to Radio Luxembourg. Used to have a show on a Sunday night. Used to start at 12. A guy called Emperor Roscoe, and he used to do the Billboard Hot 100 soul tracks. And I used to put the radio under my pillow and listen to it until God knows when. Gee, I mean, I listened to it until I passed out because I knew I had to go to school, but I couldn't switch my brain off because I wanted to know what was number 40, what was the new
Right.
James track or the
Yeah.
new Earth, Wind, Fire. Do you know what I'm saying? So that quest for, we had this conversation about music. You never get to the bottom of music. You never get to the bottom of anything.
Well, here's the thing then. Here's the thing then.
Even Jungle. People play me tunes that I played, and I can't remember. I don't know the tune. I can't remember the tune. Scotty goes on about I played the best tune he's ever heard at Eclipse, and he was searching for it for years, and he was kind of like, "Fab, I found it," and I was like, "Please play it to me."
I know what the tune was. Was it the Cross tune?
I'm not too sure, you know.
He found a tune the other week that he played that we found, and it was that it's got this weird chord, beautiful chord, and he's always believe in me. It's a really mad sample, but it was one of the earliest Cross tunes. But I never heard him play it ever again, and he lost it and lost track of it. But the beauty of this is exactly that. I said the same to Groove. Groove, there's this thing Leo and a Baldy used to play. Got a triangle with a black man with a black label.
I know what tune it is.
Really bad Italian magic. But here's the thing. The idea of what all of the crucible of the music did, and the effect reinforced that, everything, and led to this idea of the Angel EP, Terminator EP. It starts with the white label would be from Iceland. With a potato print with Kevin Storm Stand Up All Night, sending it out the back of the car. It was Scotty's Sierra. Then it's reinforced, and then it's Del Die Go Go. Then it's Internal Affairs. Then it's the Terminator EP. Then it's Angel EP, and then we're into an album deal. And it all happened in this mad 2 years. But the idea of I remember saying to Randall, I've got to I can't be your box boy anymore, because he went from a Thursday, the scene starts blowing up, and then it's Friday, Saturday night. I can't be there because I'm trying to get this album. But do you remember hearing Timeless for the first time as Timeless, not as Inner City Life?
Yeah, because when just before Timeless came out, you used to give me, I've got vivid descriptions of what you wanted Timeless to sound like.
Do you? I don't remember this. That's what I'm saying. I used to call you up.
I do. I remember you used to say, I want Timeless to sound like that melting clock, that Dali, Salvador Dali. Remember the melting clock?
Yeah.
That's what you wanted. That's what you wanted Timeless to be, like this warped, timeless void, right? And I remember you saying that. And the tune that made me really think, Jesus, The first thing that really made me think of that was Hands to Heaven. I heard that tune, man. You played it once I came round, and you had the Eternal Affairs EP.
The flat, Eternal, yeah, wow.
Yes, at the flat with Mass, who used to put in the kitchen because I was terrified
scared of him, yeah.
Yeah, remember that. Remember.
Flat, I always remember the leather jacket. He's come in the flat. Yeah, because Groove would never come over. You came over a couple of times.
Yeah, I did. I came over quite a lot of times, man. As in the making of Timeless, I came over and you played me because you'd be like, Fab, I've got this tune and I want you to hear it. And Hands to Heaven, you told me, and I remember taking I took a cab to your yard from Brixton Hill.
Jesus Christ.
And it cost something like £45 because you were like, you have to hear this tune. You'd get on a mad one where you're like, Fab, you need to come around my house now.
Bad price of a dub, bad price of a dub plate.
You know what I'm saying?
The thing is about Hands to Heaven, it was so. Yeah, go on.
You played me Hands to Heaven, and Hands to Heaven came around the same time. No, it didn't. It came just after Bookham made Music, which is one of the greatest tunes, like of all time. I mean, I'm talking across genres, and Hands to Heaven was I said to you, what is that? Take your hands up to heaven. And then it would go into a little 4 hero bit. But that Hands to Heaven and those strings, which I think was David Sylvan.
I think it was David Sylvan, and it was also the idea of what me, Mark and Digo, when you read the sleeve notes on that 12, that EP, I had to pull it out of Mark and Digo. You've got to say something about his music. You've got to say it's not all about dance floor. You know, and it was like I said, that was the university of what this was about. It was my learning curve to prepare me for this journey with Timeless. But I think as a 21-minute record, part of it was fueled by anger. But I can listen to it in third party as a conduit, if that makes sense. Because I never made it. We made it. Everyone made it. It was made through this amalgamation of. That's why it doesn't have any foothold in any genre. It's got everything in that sense. But for me, I'm trying to remember, because I have one side of that story, but do you remember hearing it in one sitting ever? Do you ever remember sitting in the whole album?
Yes, I do. I remember when I first got the album, because I had bits of it and I've had it, and it was kind of like, and I remember you said to me, Fab, though, you need to listen to it as a whole. Because that was the thing about making the album, and that's what you said to me. The first album is the most difficult album to make, and that's why Timeless. If you listen to Timeless, it's your story, isn't it? Of up to that time, it's life in Wolverhampton. It's coming out of Wolverhampton. It's
New York, it's Miami. It's back down.
It's been in Miami. It's been in London, and you hear that, and that's why that first album is always the most personal, and it's very, very difficult to replicate that. And I want to come on to that because another thing, Saturn's Return. That was I tell you what, when you was making the album, you that was a really personal album. I don't think people realize how personal that album kind of drove you kind of fucking mad.
Yeah, it was a crucifixion. I mean, it was the lamenting for the mother, and it was
yes, I wouldn't, it really was
change a thing. But for me. You know, that is what separates the artist doing, you know, and I've said this quote after quote, but this is the one that I own. A truthful idea will last in the honesty of time. And that's all that this is about. But the idea of what Timeless, you know, me and Pete were talking about the fact of why he signed it. And his idea of signing it was, well, I missed out on Jazzy. I missed out on Left Field. I wasn't going to miss out on this again. That coupled with Massive sitting next to me in his office didn't really help. You know, for 21 minutes that dog just stared him out. You know, I mean, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that anymore. You couldn't walk in with a pit bull terrier into an office with an A&R guy. You know, but I think that the raconteuring of it, the story is one thing. But even the idea of, you know, this is a bad was me and Randall driving back to London and the pressure of getting back to a club and it's we're the fucking bad, this is the bad, this is the bad, and you know, and Carl, bless his soul, Dillinger, who never does interviews.
Yeah.
We cut the breeze on Zoom. He was going, you've got to get rid of the vision, just get the audio. But just going to his flat with Bowie, and you know, we sat there, you know, on another occasion, I took Bowie to his house, to his flat in South
Did
London.
you know that? I didn't know that.
David Bowie's sitting there, and Dillinger's sitting there,
Oh,
and he's
wow.
going, I really love your music, you know. It's got a lot of heart, it's got a lot of soul, it's got a lot, it's really heavy. But the whole idea of Bowie, you know, this idea of people and connecting people, it's always about, you know, I always wanted that world to understand what this world's about.
What's going on here?
And if anyone was going to understand this world,
Yeah.
always to constantly please or, you know, to show people that I think part of making Timeless was going, you know, 21 minutes, fuck you, it sounds like 10. How do you like that? The idea of the A&R man switching it off after 3 minutes because he couldn't understand it. And the idea, you know what I mean? Just the idea of once it finished.
Is that what happened? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was designed. I designed it because I was fascinated with time. Rob was the most amazing and at the forefront of technology as an engineer. I would push him to the limits, near to breakdown, to make sure this was done right and how we were going to do it. You know, I mean, there's one point it was 14 minutes long, and I went, you know, hey, it's got to go to 21. So we're going to have to go look at the arrangement. Let me draw it all out. We're going to have to move this section. It was always going to be inner city, pressure, ja. It was always about the three movements of living in inner city, the pressure we're under, and ja, as in being Rastafarian, knowing what it's like to be in this place. And of course, ja, which I'd heard through reggae and all this other stuff about it's God and finding oneself. And the idea of the story with this beautiful voice of that and this idea of slowing down time. It was all, I mean, its concept started with, I'm looking at infinity and I can't see it, but I've got peripheral vision. And it's a steel plate moving forward through time and space on its rim edge, which was the knots of the chord. It's like, where. And I always remember reverse engineering by looking in the mirror, in the window of Ratner's The Jewelers, and seeing a watch displayed, and it was on a circle base, which has got a motor which goes around.
Yeah.
But it's got a rim that's been glued, and if you put something on it, it looks like the ring is going like this. When it's got a watch on it, so it's just going like that. And I always thought,
Yeah, right.
What was that thing? So you know, the idea of the concept. Listen, you can have as many thousands of concepts you like, but if you cannot execute them with an engineer, you know, I spent my life vicariously over the shoulder of another guy when this shit was going in black and white vertically, and I've got to speak in a language to get to what they understand, to make it my own language, so that the encoding of it, it's like, you know, because there's that idea of, well, hey, you know, to make it as an engineer. Well, that's alchemy. That's called soul. That's called application. But the beauty of all of the players, I think it's an artist's job to photograph players. They're like watching fire. Play that again. Play what again? And you're like, that thing you just did that was amazing. It's like, it's disposable to them. You know, yesterday's interview with Robin Smith was really quite prolific because Robin, it was to create the chords and the piano, you and me. I thought it was 2 days. It was 3 hours. I went to his house. He was paid for a session fee. I plugged his rolling in. We got all the MIDI, and I went, right, just play. And I was just, stop. I love that. Go back, play. And just going through all this MIDI. I took all that MIDI information, put it all through Vintage Keys and kicked holes in it, and created this sort of sound bed to then be able to harmonically do stuff too. So the idea of all these players, which is taken up from the idea of funk and jazz and also Gussie's flat. If you ever remember when you left Gussie's flat, on the back of the door is a picture of Art Blakey, and it's a poster of Father Time from the documentary. Yeah, and it's all of these things. All of these things are all relevant to the album,
Everything.
to everything. And
Yeah.
weirdly enough, I felt that your the appreciation that you guys gave me from the support, because I always thought, oh my God, I'm going to sell out with this album. I didn't want to say, it was like, I want to make an authentic album that's just going to, it's going to change it. And you can't fucking criticize it. You can criticize it, but it does what it says on a tin.
Yeah. And the album did. I mean, Inner City Life was, you got to remember, that came at a time when there was no vocals. People never made songs as such. People used vocal samples.
Yeah.
And a standalone track like Inner City Life, you know, wouldn't really have got played. You did various mixes of that, but I always played the original.
Yeah.
Because I loved
it. Did.
because a lot of this as well. You got to remember, Goldie, it was Kemi. A lot of this was Kemi.
Inspiration.
I remember you say to me, Kemi was that like a spiritual guide for you.
It was my muse. It was my musical muse.
She really was. She really was.
And I actually found that in the embodiment with Natalie. It's like it shifted into Natalie. Natalie's the same. Rage just came down, the poster behind you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Let me play with it. There she goes. She's just took it down, mate. You better put.
Oh my God! Can you believe that?
You better put that back up.
That is crazy, man.
You better put that back up. You better put that back up.
And it's all bent up in the corner as well, you know.
Better pick it up.
Oh God! Hold on, one second.
You know what I mean? She's gonna start throwing stones after you.
That's crazy. It's actually gone under the chair. How the fuck did that happen, man? Wow, that is deep, Kenny. With us, man.
Well, it was the idea of the inspiration of what she had done for me, and again, all right, we'll leave it. Right, we'll leave it. It's the idea where it's just one of those things that Red or Dead Sin in Camden, the whole idea of doing Terminator in Camden and Angel in Camden was at Arlington Street, and going to Rage week in, week out, was such a powerful time for us. Groove Stories, very different because it was catching him at Haringey. But you were the champion of the music for me. And I think that I don't think there'll ever be another time in history where it was like, you think, where did 25 years go? Well, 26 when you think about it, because it came out, July 29th this year, 25 years ago. So it was a year and a half to 2 years before running up to that. Where did it go? It's just gone so fast.
It's crazy. It doesn't feel like 25 years, and then it does.